When Bill attended high school, he was cut off the JV basketball team, and his junior year he barely made the varsity team. His white coach saw potential in him. He rarely got minutes during his junior year, but by senior year he gained more minutes. During 1966 to 1969, he was a head coach for the Boston Celtics, becoming the first African American NBA coach. In the 1900s, there was much hate between the black and white. What was it like for Bill Rusell as to live in the racism during his childhood?
Actually, Russell didn't have the most difficult childhood. A lot of his issues in terms of race were actually after he joined the Celtics, because even though he was the best player on a great team, Boston has always been a very segregated city. And during the time that he was playing for the Celtics, there was a lot of animosity because Boston had imposed, or actually Massachusetts had imposed, forced integrated busing in the city of Boston, and riots broke out in South Boston. Whites who didn't want their kids going to schools that were predominantly black, and so that spilled over, and there was a lot of animosity. And Russell, even though he was on the court, the darling of the Boston fans, he had a hard time even getting a place to live. He had to move to one of the suburbs because no one would sell him a house in the city.
As Russell grew, he became an extraordinary basketball player. Eventually, he entered the NBA and became part of the Boston Celtics organization. During his time in Boston, there was a lot of controversy between Russell and the whites. Racism was still among him. What type of racism did he encounter during his time on the team?
Well, you have to remember that prior to the mid-1950s, when Russell began playing in the NBA, the league had been almost exclusively white. He was not the Jackie Robinson of the NBA by any stretch of the imagination. He was not the first black player, but for example, the Celtics teams that he played on, out of the 12 men on the team, probably 4 of them were African American. And so he suffered with the same struggles that blacks were facing in every walk of life, in that there was this sort of imaginary line or quota system that you couldn't have more than X number of black players on the team at any one time, as you saw with Glory Road.
What made him want to be a head coach?
Actually, he sort of came into head coaching accidentally. Red Auerbach was stepping down as the coach of the Celtics after many years, and Auerbach's first choice was Tom Heinsohn, but Heinsohn did not feel that he was ready to coach, and so he turned then to the second player on his list. Actually, Russell was probably the first player on his list, but Russell wanted to keep playing. And so when Russell said that he wanted to keep playing and that he didn't want to retire from playing to coach, that's when Heinsohn came into the picture. But when Heinsohn turned down the job, then Auerbach went back to Russell and asked him if he would like to be a player coach. And Russell hoping that there would be a certain continuity. And you have to remember they were in the middle of winning 11 championships in 13 years. Rusell hoped that there would be continuity, and so he just sort of accepted the position. I don't know that he lobbied for it. I don't think he ever really coveted the position of coach. It's just that Auerbach asked him to do it, and he did.
Last question. What other teams did he coach for?
The only one that I know of for sure is the Seattle Supersonics. I think he was their inaugural coach when that franchise began. I think Rusell was the first coach. And do you know for sure? I'm thinking maybe Sacramento. Yeah, and then he's coached Sacramento for a while. He was not particularly successful with either Seattle or Sacramento. Because I don't think his commitment to either one of those franchises was as intense as his commitment to the Celtics, and particularly to Auerbach.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Conroy.